Hey everybody, Marty the JavaScript party, and we are slowly. Oh, and that's my buddy Rat. She is in a better mood today. We ended pretty harsh yesterday. She did not want to do that last video. I don't really blame her. I think we did like 3.5, 4 hours of videos yesterday. Um, but um, one really nice thing was that the whole unit. I was having issues with my unit tests, and they were basically it was not recognizing that this expect was a um, jasmine expect. It thought it was a chai expect, and it took really honestly like a week or two just to even figure out, oh wait, it thinks it's a chai. I like see like when you mouse over right now, it's not telling me anything. It's still loading. It would take it a while to be broken, and then it was just confusing, and it just took a while to even determine what the problem was. And then once we determined what the problem was, then it was a little easier to search. Um, and ChatGPT was just like running me around in circles. Like it would give me all these random, like, just do this, just do that, and none of them were working. And so that's kind of funny, and that's kind of, I think, as a software developer, if you ever work, you're going to find that that is what you get a lot when something doesn't work, is you get people just saying like something that just sort of makes sense, but it doesn't work. And ChatGPT does the exact same thing. And that's because ChatGPT is just all it, I believe, personal. Okay, so I think everything I say here is a personal opinion, but ChatGPT is literally just an amazing search engine, and it's an amazing person mimicker. So it has those two things in common. It knows how to mimic, and it knows how to search through massive amounts of data. So um, one of my favorite all-time movies, I really need to watch it again, is the 13th Warrior, 12th Warrior, 13th Warrior. And Antonio Banderas plays this guy, an Arab guy, who gets thrown into a mission with 12 Vikings. And he doesn't know the language when he starts. And they kind of show this sort of passage of time where he's watching them talk. And then he's starting to recognize certain repeated things. And then after a while, he can understand what they're saying and all that. Um, I think that they kind of left off a part where he was probably like sort of mimicking things they're saying, but not knowing exactly what they're saying, or knowing what they were saying, but not able to say what they were saying. Um, but then, and they kind of just fast forward him to the part of understanding what they were saying and being able to express himself in a way that he could be understood. I don't think ChatGPT is to the point where it can understand what it's trying to say. It just mimics, and it does a great job of finding the best things to mimic. That's my personal opinion. And I think that figuring out this problem was a perfect example. And I think it has one enormous disadvantage, and its enormous disadvantage is that um, it has to accept sort of the accepted thing. So the fix for it was very, very good, smart, clever, brilliant, and hacky. It was a hacky, brilliant, elegant solution. But, at the end of the day, it's not going to be around forever. I hope it shouldn't be around forever. It's kind of a bummer that we have to do it. So the my criticism is not of the solution itself. It's of the situation where we have to do the solution. And ChatGPT just would not present the working answer. And I know it had to have found the working answer. It just couldn't present it because that working answer, I think, is like, I don't, I think it sees that answer as beneath deserving to be promoted. I believe that answer should be promoted to everybody because it sucks. I shouldn't have to not know what this does. You know, I shouldn't be able to not have these things just because ChatGPT doesn't like that answer. So, anyways, that's kind of where I'm at on that. Now, this morning I was sort of thinking like this folder is really starting to drive me crazy, right? And it's starting to drive me crazy because it's like I have too many folders in here. So when I start a new job, which I've done way more times than I probably should have recognized it. I should have recognized something about my life when I started having to change jobs so often. But I've started dozens and dozens, probably upwards of 40 new IT jobs over my 30-year career. Um, and yeah, it's probably more like 20, maybe 25, but probably close to a new job a year. And there was a couple jobs that I was at for like one that I was at for like 8 years, another one I was at for like, and a couple that I was at 3 years. But then I had a lot of jobs where they only lasted for like 3 to 7 months or something like that. But when I start at a new job, especially in an Angular, especially before standalone, and I've never started a new job since standalone where they were doing standalone. But the first thing I'd look at is the modules, and I just take a modules file, and I just take a deep look and try to really understand what it's going. And if it makes a lot of sense what's going on there, like if you can read it and it makes sense, and then you kind of test a few things and it actually is true to form, it actually does what it implies it does, which is not always true, then I think a certain thing about like, oh, well, okay, so these guys are really like they look at the code at multiple levels. And then another thing I look at is folder structures. And if I see like a folder that's got 100 files in it, it's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of a red flag. Um, Not necessarily a red flag, but probably kind of a red flag. And sometimes you'll open up a folder and there will literally be 100 files in there, and all that. But like then so I would say in my professional software development career, so not university, and not before that, just when I was doing things for professional to get paid to help develop software or develop software directly. Um, from like 1996 to probably 2010, if you looked in anything that I worked in, you would find, unless there was a manager or someone that forced me, you would find a directory with 100 files in it. Like, I just did not see the value. And then one time I worked someplace where they had really well, like they laid out all the directories really, really well. And I was just like, wow, this is like you can really understand this application, like something that would have taken me like a month to sort of absorb. I can absorb in like 35 seconds because of the layout of the file structure. It just sort of easily documents what things do. And all that. And I would say, as of this morning, anything I worked on, if there was more than 5 or 6 files, um, there was only directories in there. And I do think that that mindset. Uh, so I think that mindset might be slightly off, and I think it's okay if you have a file that's not in a directory next to a bunch of other directories, because that is indicative that I don't know where that file is. But what was driving me nuts is I had this animation, camera, geometry, material, mesh, renderer, scene, and triple. And the thing was I was like, I don't want to have this many folders. I definitely don't want to get it any more than these, or not much more, anyways. And so it was just like, okay, um, what is the what what divides these? And really, there's only one here that is different than the others. Like this one, scene, renderer, mesh, material, geometry, camera, and animation are all like sort of 3 related, or drawing related, um, rendering related, um, some kind of word like that. And then um, scene creation. But then triple is just like a structure. There is no reason for triple to be in a folder. That's kind of what hit me this morning. I don't have to have all of these go into a folder. I could just have triple, since it's just a data structure, be its own because it's the only data structure. Now, I think that animation is a little different because there is no animation concept in ThreeJS. So that one is a bit of a standalone too, but it does. Okay, and I don't actually think, yeah, and it doesn't even have a single ThreeJS sort of concept in it. Um, it does. I thought it had one thing that no, yeah, there is no ThreeJS concept in um, in this other, yeah, nothing. There's nothing in here that is ThreeJS specific. So animation is sort of a standalone, but the rest of these all actually have a direct sibling or doppelganger in ThreeJS, right? Like there's a geometry in ThreeJS, there's a material, there's a mesh, and there's a render, and there's a scene. All those live in, also have a ThreeJS doppelganger. Animation does not have a ThreeJS doppelganger, and Triple doesn't. So it feels like I need to move these one, two, three, four, five, six folders into another folder like called like three, and then animation. The fact that it's not in three is actually telling, because it would be really easy to think that there's a animation in three, and then triple. The fact that it's not in three is telling. So I think that's what I'm going to do right now. And this is something that, like, I think that one reason that um, I didn't, I was very uncomfortable moving folder files before like 2010 is because it was extraordinarily difficult to do before 2010, and now it's extremely simple. Now the IDE pretty much, IDEs take care of it for you. But anyways, so I'm going to create another three folder here, and then I'm going to, I would like to just drag them all at once. I think I'm hoping, I do not want three, so I'm going to hold the control button down and unclick it. And then I remember taking a course about Windows 95 um, in, I want to say it was like 1997. Right when I first graduated college, I had come up with this, I'd hatched this scheme to not have to pay my student loans back, which I ended up paying them back and paid them off and all that. But to not, because I saw that as long as you were in two classes for less than 6 months apart and you passed them, that you don't have to start paying your student loans. And my student loans had 0% interest, so it didn't. So it was like, hey, why start paying these now? Eventually, what happened was I took a computer basic programming course and at this college called Chattahoochee Tech, which is around here, and it used to really be a joke. It's actually a pretty good college today, but when I took some courses there, it was a joke because the teacher would never tell us when the tests were, and so the class met every Sunday, but tests were on every Saturday, but tests were on Sunday, and and so not, there wasn't a test every week, so he would go and have a test, and he would never tell, and he would never tell some of us about the test, and then we failed the class, and there was just nothing that could be done because I mean the school was just a joke at the time. And like I said, it's not like that today. You should not judge Chattahoochee Tech today by those standards, but at the time it was a complete joke. And so anyways, I failed the class, so I had to start paying my student loans back, but I paid them back. And here's another little sort of gripe I have is I took a course at this very good school called Okaloosa Walton Community College in in Fort Walton Beach in 1997, and it was a Java course. And so I took the course, and it said it was a Java course, but really it was an object oriented coding course. But I was more of a scripter. I mostly worked like in Perl and things like that at the time in scripting languages. And this course was a Java course, and me and my wife took it. And she got an A in that class, and I got a C in that class. Now the thing about it, the reason I got a C was my project was the only project that worked, and we had to make a calculator in Java, a Java applet calculator, I believe it was, or it might have been just, yeah, it was an applet. And so we had to create this calculator. My calculator worked, but it wasn't object orientated. Like there's this main function, and it just did looping to to do its job. But my wife wrote the code in Java in object oriented, but it wouldn't even. I think hers compiled, but it wouldn't work. And she got an A, and everybody else in the class. And the teacher said he would have failed me if anybody else had gotten their project to work. The only reason he gave me a C was because my project worked. But if it hadn't worked, and I do think that that is a serious problem in our industry. I think there's way too much focus on things being the way that people want them emotionally, as opposed to things working. But anyways, we'll get off of that. So I'm going to drag this over. I do have it open, some of these files open, so it'll be interesting to see what happens to the IDE. And it should fix all references for me automatically. So let's see. I'm driving. I like how it put the little 6 there. I'm going to drag these over. It's asking me, are you sure? Yes, I am sure. I do want that pop-up to always happen, because sometimes with drag and drop you can accidentally draw things. Now at some point it should tell me, like, oh, see, it says it's analyzing these and its dependencies. So it's going through this analyzation process. I don't know why it's taking so long. Yeah, I want to update the import for camera. I want to update the import for geometry. I want to update the imports for material, mesh, render, scene. So I wanted to think through all of those things. I know it's very tempting to not think through things, and to sort of just be like yes to all and never actually look. It only took me like 15 seconds to say yes to each individual ones and see it. So anyways, one of the things that is kind of a bummer is when you move things over and it updates it, it doesn't actually save them. So if you look in here, you'll see that this is unsaved. And I don't know if it's the only unsaved thing. It looks like it is the only unsaved thing. So I'm going to hit File and Save in here and see if it actually fixes everything. All right, so that's good. So I think this is better. I think when we look at our interfaces, we have our animation interface. We have 3, which like isn't quite enough, and we have triple. And then if you look at this, you see, oh, we have camera, we have geometry, and all that. So it is interesting that camera is here, like camera is fixed. I mean, camera, like the IDE is no longer looking at the old location and saying, hey, this doesn't exist. It didn't always work that way, so that's good. It's working better. All right, so so let's just sort of just do a sum up of what is next, so I can move on to my other video about the speech API. Since we pretty much took up all the time dealing with moving interfaces and talking about the unit tests stuff and sort of going down memory lane. But basically what we have right now is we have a renderer. We have a component, and this component is showing here, and it's up front and all that. And we within that component, if we do an inspect, we have a canvas. Now, if you've been doing like front end at all, like if you're like a sort of a front end person, you know that there's sort of a concept of responsive coding. And with responsive, what we would do is give rules, like styling rules that tell this canvas to match up with the div, its parent div. And that would work, but it won't give us what we want. And the reason it won't give us what we want is because ThreeJS is going to draw things based on what we told it the width and height of it is going to be, not what the CSS rules forced the width. And so even if we can get the canvas to kind of fit based on CSS rules, which we might not even be able to do that, because it is possible that it'll use inline styles or something like that to make that happen. Like as you see down here, this canvas has inline styles that would definitely, I believe, would have more, like you are, unless you use important, it's just not going to be able to change it. So we're going to have to use Three.js. We're going to have to inspect this div, use Three.js to tell three. We're use JavaScript to determine what the width and height it is, and then use Three.js to tell Three.js what the width and height is, and then it's going to draw it in the exact spot. Which, yeah, like there's a very good chance that that is like uncomfortable for you, if you do have a strong um, front end experience level, and if you are like really committed to like responsive designs and things like that. But like canvases and drawing things just aren't don't work in responsive design because they draw things in specific spots and all that. So that is that. I think tomorrow we will move forward. I don't know exactly how we're going to move forward, but we will move forward of actually trying to get, uh, I guess, I don't know. When we're working on it, we'll figure it out. But maybe we'll be just trying to get the update the Three.js to use the right width and height and figure that all out. Um, there could be some timing issues. We could inadvertently create the this changed before the a value changed before I could draw it issues. So got to be on hyper alert. We also need to be on hyper alert for anything that might screw up unit tests or the other tests, since we did make an architectural change. Anyways, happy coding, everybody. Bye.